Hey everybody, my name's Ryan Ferreri. I'm a beekeeper in Canton, and I've been keeping bees for 10 years this season. So beekeeping's become a big part of my life, and I'm excited that so many of you are going to get started this year. So now I'm going to go through the process of opening the hive. Um, this is for me, obviously the fun part of beekeeping, getting in there, seeing what the bees are doing, and doing what I need to keep them healthy. So we're going to go through preparation and then the process of getting in the hive and talk about what we're looking for. All right, so the first thing that you want to do before you open the hive is gather your gear. So you're going to want to get your protective gear, so your jacket or suit and gloves or veil, um, and everything that you're going to need to protect yourself. You're definitely going to want to have a hive tool. Um, Hive tools are tools that we use to break apart things inside of the hive that have become stuck together with propolis, and they're essential for doing an inspection. You'll want to have a smoker and smoker fuel. You want to have something to light that smoker with. You will want to have extra boxes and frames at hand, um, especially during the first part of the season. The hives are building up very quickly, and we want to make sure that if you do need to add space for your bees, that you have your extra boxes and frames available to do that as you're inspecting, rather than having to scramble and look for something and interrupt your inspection. Bee food, if you're feeding, especially when you're getting started, those bees are sucking down lots and lots of sugar water to make wax. And you're going to want to make sure that you bring a fair amount of sugar syrup with you to the bee yard, so that you can refill those feeders without having to walk away. And lastly, a notebook and pencils. Um, it is really a great idea to do record keeping while you're inspecting. Um, Really, toward the end of inspecting a single hive, is the best time to write down some notes about what you saw, because once you move on to another hive, or you're done for the day and you put all your stuff away, you're not going to remember what you saw in the hive, and it's always useful to have notes to come back to. All right, so I'd like to take you through the equipment that I bring to an inspection. All right, so first of all, everything I bring to an inspection, I carry there in a 5-gallon plastic bucket right there. So all the things you see on the table, except for my jacket, fit into the blue bucket. I like using a bucket because it has a handle, um, and it's just easy to carry around. All right, next, have my jacket. I use a jacket, not a full suit. Um, I, I guess your mileage may vary, but I've never had a problem with bees climbing up my pant legs and stinging me, so I don't cover up my legs when I do inspections. This is a ventilated jacket, which means it's made out of like a few different layers of mesh that together are too thick for the bees to sting through, but the air flows through readily. So in the summertime, when you're doing an inspection, the air goes right through it. It's less sweaty, it's more comfortable, and you can inspect your bees longer. All right. Next, hive tools. So this is a standard paint scraper style hive tool. I have several of these. Amazingly, I still have the very first one that I started with. This is not it. It's red. But you know, you lose hive tools. So buy a few of them. Try different styles. See what you like. Everybody kind of has a different preference with the style that they prefer to use. All right, smoker. Standard smoker, medium size. The size is really has to do with how long you can keep it burning. You know, if you're going to be spending a couple of hours, you might want to invest in like the really tall ones. But this one, you know, if I get it packed full of pine needles, it'll burn for about an hour, and they're easy to add on to. Smoker fuel. Um, I like to use for smoker fuel. I start my smoker with egg carton. I've got lots of this because my family goes through tons of eggs, so we always have eggs laying around or egg cartons laying around. It's easy to light. Um, it's easy to light. Uh, it's plentiful, and it makes a nice little base of embers that will get your fuel going. My fuel of choice is white pine needles. We have some pine trees in the neighborhood, so I just go down and pick up a trash bag of it every once in a while. Um, the nice thing about pine needles is one, they're free, and two, if you pack a bunch of them in your smoker, it makes it easy to keep it burning for a long time. All right. Next, gloves. Okay, so these are 7 mil nitrile gloves from Harbor Freight. I like to use those because they allow me to feel what's going on in the hive. I tried like the goat skin gloves when I was starting out, and I couldn't feel anything, and I ended up being kind of clumsy. So I like the nitrile gloves. I've only been stung a couple of times through them, and both times it was when I've been, you know, like picking up a frame kind of the wrong way, and I squeezed a bee between the frame and my hand. You know, one other time I think there was, you know, I think I'd ripped one or something, and a bee stung me on the top of the hand. But for the most part, um, the bees don't sting through nitrile gloves, so I like them. That, and it's nice to start with a fresh pair of gloves every time you start an inspection. All right, a lighter, preferably, you know, something with kind of a neck on it so that you can get it down in there and and start your smoker. All right, this is a Varroa Easy Check. It's a container to do a mite count. It's a pretty neat little invention. You open it up, you put some bees in it. Um, you know, you dump some. I use blue windshield washer fluid. You know, shake it up, and then the mites fall through the bottom, and you can look on the bottom and count them. We're really encouraging people to get into the habit of doing mite counts. The number one predictor of whether your bees are going to survive really seems to survive through the winter really seems to be whether you've been able to control mites. Um, you know, despite what you may be reading, you know, with natural beekeeping forums and stuff like that, if you don't control your mites, most likely you're going to lose your bees. So do yourself a favor, read up on mite control, but the you know it's really important to know how many mites you have so you can make a decision on treating. Those are like $20. And it just there's a lot of ways to do a mite count, but it's just easy. All right, that is pretty much it for what I take to the bee yard to do an inspection. All right, so the first thing that you have to do after you get all of your stuff laid out is put your suit on, you know, get protected, and go and stand by the hives and observe the bees. How are they acting? Did they attack you when you were coming up to the hive? Generally, if it's a sunny day, weather's nice, and it's warm, the bees aren't going to bother you when you approach the hive. They're focused on their own work, and they're not going to be reacting to a beekeeper close by the hive. So if they are, it may be an indication that something is wrong, either around the hive or in the hive. You might look for, you know, signs of animal damage like skunk damage or something like that. Or once you're in the hive, you might want to make extra sure that the queen is in there and that she's healthy, because that can definitely, an unhappy or unhealthy queen or no queen can definitely make the bees a little bit more aggressive. If you have more than one hive, which we absolutely recommend for beginners, is one hive more active than the other? Um, this is this is the main reason why we recommend that you start with multiple hives, so that you have some frame of reference. And when you get into a hive and you see that the population's lower or less active or something, you have something to compare it to. Um, so, pay attention to the amount of traffic and the demeanor of different hives. Are the bees bringing in pollen? Um, Bees bringing in pollen means that they need protein in the hive, which usually means they're raising brood. So you want to pay attention to what the bees are doing at the front if they're carrying pollen. Another interesting thing to look at is the color of the pollen. Um, the obviously the different plants that are blooming at the time produce different color pollen. There are guides online that you can go look at to see to match up the color that you're seeing on your bees to the color of local plants pollen. So it's one way to understand what's blooming in your area. Okay, so you're suited up. You've observed your bees. Next, we're going to light the smoker. So um, you want to gather your tinder. You want to gather your kindling or fuel. And I like to use some wet grass. So the tinder, you get it lit, get it burning. You put some fuel on top of it. Once everything is burning, you take some wet grass and you put that on top. What that does is it cools the smoke down and prevents it acts as kind of a filter to prevent you from blowing embers onto the bees, which they don't like very much. So I like to think of lighting the smoker as kind of a meditative activity, a way to calm myself before a bee inspection and take time to think about what I need to accomplish while I'm in the hive. So while you're lighting your smoker, think about all those things, take some deep breaths, and relax. Because what's next is, you get into your hive. So now I'm going to show a quick video on lighting a smoker. I'll kind of walk you through it here. Okay, so that is tinder, and what I'm using is egg carton. So you can use egg carton or the to-go cups or the to-go cup carriers or anything like that. I like to use egg carton because I have 5 kids and we go through 8 dozen eggs every couple of weeks, so I always have egg cartons around. So light up your tinder. It should just take a second. And sometimes it's helpful once you get the tinder lit, um, it's helpful to give it a couple pumps just to get some air on it, help accelerate it. Because really what you're trying to accomplish here is to get kind of a kind of a bed of embers, so that will ignite your fuel. All right, so next you want to get your fuel. I use pine needles most of the time. So you take some of your fuel, put it in there, um, give it a few pumps, and get it burning. And then I like to really pack it full, especially with pine needles since they do generally kind of burn fast. I like to have tons and tons of pine needles in there and pack it up. That way it burns for a long time. Usually if I pack it to the top with pine needles, it can burn, about an hour, which is normally how long it takes me to do my inspections in my yard. All right, so the next thing you want to do is smoke the hive. So first of all, double check your veil. Make sure that it's you know, closed, zip shut, no bees are going to get in. And then approach your hive from the back or the side. Um, the reason you do that is if you approach it from the front, bees that are flying in could run into you, which doesn't make them very happy. And by standing in front of the hive, you're alerting the guard bees at the entrance of your presence, and they will quickly come out and let you know that they'd prefer that you're not there. So approach from the back or side, um, give a couple slow puffs at the entrance, and then one or two slow puffs under the cover. And we'll show you what that looks like here. All right, so we're kind of off to the side of the hive, just a couple of puffs at the entrance. That'll get the guard bees kind of a little more docile, not so reactive to your presence. And then you want to lift up your cover generally and put a couple of puffs under the cover and then close it. I didn't do it here. There's no bees in this hive. This is that's a regular inner cover. The foam is what I use under the lid in the wintertime. So you want to get a couple slow puffs at the entrance, couple slow puffs under the cover, and then stand back and wait 30 seconds or so until you go into the hive. Um, After that, you want to take the lid off and set it down on the ground next to the hive, open side up. What we're going to do throughout the inspection is we're going to set boxes and stuff on that as a base, and go back and kind of crisscross things to prevent crushing too many bees. All right. So the next thing, once you get the covers off, you're going to see something like this. Hopefully, this is a nice looking hive. Lots of bees on the frames and everything. They should kind of mind their own business. They shouldn't be flying around or being loud or coming and trying to sting you in the face. Um, what you want to do is use your smoker, put a couple of slow puffs on those bees, and they will go down in between the frames, and you'll see them kind of looking up at you. That's what you want to see before you proceed. Um, once you've seen that, you're going to want to start your inspection. So for the inspection, I like to start on the outer frames. Usually there aren't a lot of, there's not a lot of stuff on the outer frames. So just take your hive tool, and that's one reason I like this style of hive tool. You can use it to kind of break the frames loose. They shouldn't be quite as, I don't know, crispy as this. In the summertime, the propolis gets really hard in the winter. So um, use your uh, use your hive tool, loosen things up, and then take frame out and inspect it. Um, Once you've inspected the frame, set it aside. It's the only frame you'll have to take out of that box. So then you just um, repeat the same process, get a frame loose, take it out, take a look at it, and then as you move down the hive, you're going to be moving your frames into that open space. Once you're done, take your first frame and put it back in there. And then to go down to the next box, break the propolis seal between the boxes. Then excuse the camera work here, but I'm trying to do this with one hand. And you want to set down the box on top of the inner cover that's upside down on top of your outer cover. Smoke the bees down, and then continue your inspection. All right. So you're in the hive. What do you look for? So the number one thing we're looking for is brood in all stages of development. So you're looking for eggs, you're looking for open larvae, and you're looking for capped brood. and I'll have pictures of each of those in a second. You're looking for the presence of honey or nectar in the cells. That's the carbohydrate food source for the bees. And if it's not in there, then they're not able to, especially not able to raise young. So we want to make sure that there's honey and nectar in there. If there isn't, it's a sign that you need to feed. Pollen, you want to see that there's some pollen coming in and being stored away. You want to look for room to grow. So a general rule of thumb is if you have um, a box like a 10 frame box and 8 frames have, stuff on them, wax and brood, then it's time to add a box. What I like to do is take those outer frames, move them to the middle, and then add a box on top of that. That kind of encourages the bees to move in and then up. And last, queen cells. Queen cells, unless you're, intentionally creating new queens, queen cells are a sign that either your hive is getting ready to swarm or that something is wrong with your queen. She's either dead or failing and she's being replaced by the workers. So the presence of queen cells generally means that there's something going on with your queen or with your hive that you have to deal with. And you don't need to find the queen every time. It's nice to find her, but if there's eggs in there, then she's been in there in the last 3 days at least. So you don't need to find her every time. All right, so this is a frame of cap brood, and this is a pattern that we like to see. So very consistent coverage on the frame, not a lot of holes. If you had a lot of holes or just mostly open cells and not a lot of brood, that would be indication of a problem. Either your queen isn't doing well, or you have a whole lot of mites in the hive. Or something like that. So this is kind of the pattern that we're looking for. So the main thing you're going to look for is eggs. These little white specks in the bottom of these cells are eggs, and you can see they are kind of hard to see. If you have a hard time seeing tiny things, it could be useful to put a magnifying glass in your kit. But what we see here is a bunch of eggs. In the middle are some very recently hatched larvae, and then as we go to the right, they get a little bit bigger. Um, these are larger larvae, and then as we move further to the right, it's capped brood or pupa that are developing into adults. We'll go back to that a second. So one thing to take note of is the color of the larva. We want to see generally this creamy white kind of color on the larva. If they're brown or black or starting to shrivel up, then you'll want to make sure that that your hive is getting enough um, sugar, either in nectar or feed. If you see a lot of them that are kind of dry looking, they should be shiny and wet looking like this. If you see them dry, that's an indication that you need to feed. This is another picture of a uh, nice patch of brood. It doesn't have to cover the whole frame, but what we're looking for is this nice consistent pattern and not a whole bunch of holes. This is a frame from a spring hive, so you can see this is capped honey on the left side that is left over from winter. Then they've deposited pollen after that, and then you have brood in various stages. But again, it's a pretty consistent pattern of brood. All right, so here's a potential problem. So these are queen cells, and because they're on the face of the frame like this, generally that means that they are um, either emergency cells, which the bees make when the queen dies unexpectedly, or supersedure cells, uh, which the workers make when when the queen isn't doing too well and and they want to replace her. And I should have said before, the workers make the cells. The queens do not make the cells. Inside of each of these is a queen developing. So if they're on the bottom of the frame, generally that that means that they're preparing to swarm. So that's it's another topic that you probably won't run into your first season, but we will definitely help educate you in what to do to prevent swarming next year. Here's another picture of some queen cells. In on this one, you can tell there's no eggs in any of the other cells, so most likely this queen died, and these are the cells that the workers are making new queens in. A couple of them you see are kind of brown at the bottom. That means that these ones are getting ready to emerge soon. And we'll go back to that. So if you do see this, if you do see queen cells like this in your hive, you have a couple of options. One is to just leave them alone. A new queen, will emerge and get mated, and you should be seeing new eggs in the hive in a few weeks, from this point. So, you could just put it back in there, feed the hive, and hope for the best. Another thing you can do is to get a commercially produced queen and introduce her into the hive and get her laying eggs. All right, toward the end of the season, this is what you're going to see in the hive: lots and lots of honey. So this frame is capped honey on the top. That's that nice white wax capping, and then uncapped honey on the bottom. There's a tiny bit of pollen in the middle, but at the end of the season, September mostly is really when you want to pay attention to the amount of or start paying attention to the amount of honey in the hive. I like to take 2 medium boxes full of honey on each hive through the winter, and that's about 60 pounds. So, you want to see about 2 full boxes of frames that look like this. Here's a picture of a queen. Like I said before, you don't need to find her every time, but it is nice when you do find her. So, um, she looks different than the other bees. The bees generally, she generally has um, a retinue or group of bees that is facing her as she moves around through the hive. So keep an eye out for her. But like I said before, it's not necessary that you see her every time. All right, so once you've done your inspection, put it back together. Put your hive back together very carefully. Um, Try not to squish your bees. You will. We all squish bees. Um, so, um, put the boxes on kind of off center and then slide them to minimize how much you squish bees. Put everything back in the right order. Don't go flipping boxes around. There's a time for that, but it's not during the summer. Add boxes if needed, and take your notes before moving to the next hive, or you will definitely forget what you looked at. And that's really all. It's really all to inspecting the hive. Again, it's going to be intimidating your first few times, but you'll get the hang of it. You'll do great. And if you have any questions, please reach out to one of the beekeepers in the club, and we'll help you succeed. All right. Thanks, everybody, and we'll take questions.